Welcome to another episode of The Wireless Way. I'm your host, Chris Whitaker, and I'm grateful that you made time to check out this important episode. I talk about a lot of things on The Wireless Way, and just a reminder, I'm sure you've heard me say it, the Wireless Way is a double entendre, meaning wireless is no strings attached and no judgment, and the past, the journey, the adventure. We're going to hit on a little bit of that today, and normally I'm weaving in some kind of technology around wireless, and you know what? I think I still am. It's just from a different angle. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. So glad you're here today. And I'm also grateful for Craig Sikowski and Ralph Pasquarello for joining us. A little bit about them before I bring them on. Craig is a seasoned executive with 25 plus years experience in IT, insurance, and fintech. That's an interesting combination for this conversation. He leads the tech collective and care team. And you're probably thinking care team. We're going to explain that. It's probably not what you're thinking, but it's optimizing digital solutions for major clients. His strategic collaboration with corporate CIOs, CFOs, and CISOs drive industry innovation, product delivery, and key partnerships with Fortune 1000 companies. He has presented cyber solutions to the U.S. Secret Service at the Atlanta Cyber Fraud Task Force and has served on technology boards across the industry. And as far as Ralph, again, equally impressive guy. Both of these are just solid guys. So glad I got to get to work with them. But Ralph has been moderating and speaking at dozens of conferences and panels on cyber liability and data breach risk management for over 15 years. If you've been listening to me for a while, I talk about it's irresponsible to have a technology conversation and not include cybersecurity. So Ralph, with a cyber insurance background, he's hosted educational seminars on cyber exposure for all industries, including operational technology and intellectual technology. He advises the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service Cyber Fraud Task Force. He's a former executive committee chairman for the Tech 400 Cyber Symposium and advisor to Georgia Tech's Research Institute. He has served and chaired various boards and organizations. Ralph joined the Tech Collective in 2023 and helped create and launch the CARE report in 2024. Gentlemen, did I get that right? Does that sound like you guys?
Great job. I love it.
Man, it's always embarrassing when I read it and go, Chris, yeah, you got that wrong. The date was off or whatever. I actually made the mistake one time that I guess he didn't send me a bio. And I thought, hey, this was actually probably a couple of years ago. I'll just grab his name and some information from his LinkedIn. I'll drop it in ChatGPT and say, write a bio. And that's what I did. And this sounded great, although it had his college wrong. Of all things, his college. And that was when I, became savvy on hallucinations, I think they call it, right? Where AI just gets it wrong. It didn't, for some reason, somewhere there was a guy with that name that went to that college, but it wasn't him. Craig, let's start with you. A typical Wireless Way fashion. What's not in the bio? What got you here?
Kind of an interesting roadmap. I've had multiple careers. Started out in the insurance field many years ago. I was a quant and moved into underwriting, ran different programs, got interested in IT, started that career, sat on different roles all the way from project management, working up to a C-level, and then wanted to create different programs in the agency space. And that's where we are today and bringing people on the ride. We've got a fellow co-founder, Jim Watts, and I were the founders for the Tech Collective. And when we met Ralph years back, we came up with a scenario of similar problems. And I'll let Ralph give an update on his background.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
Yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
I've also had many careers and spent quite a few years, 25 years with Heidelberg out of Germany. And 2009 went into the insurance industry, and where I fell into cyber technology errors and omissions right away. And I just found it fascinating because it's always changing. It's not static like a lot of the insurance postures. So anyways, I did that. And about a year and a half ago, I left the insurance industry and decided to go full-time into cyber, joined the Tech Collective with Craig and Jim, and we came up with something that is missing, something that is very unique and that is very much needed in the insurance process and the security process, balancing those two so that companies can move forward with confidence in this era that we're in right now of a cyber nightmare.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cyber nightmare. Yes, that's depending on what company you're talking about. They've either had the nightmare or it may be coming and they have to be ready for it. Hey, Craig, just real quick, did you start your career off in technology? What was like your first job you thought was like, this is my job? Was it in tech or was it something else?
Wow. Now you're really pulling back the onion. So I started off my career as a school teacher many years ago while getting my higher education degree. I was looking at mathematics, and that's why I became a quant for an insurance company. Really liked that side of the business, looking at different numbers, analytics, and figuring out how to continue on with that. I thought technology was the next wave. Computers were evolving and wanted to jump in and learn more about that. You were talking about security. That also has always intrigued me, between money movement, security, and things along those lines. And that is really what progressed my career into the fintech side of the house, designing different programs. So I didn't start off in IT, developed into that naturally. And as the market grew and security process and the problems we're always facing and trying to correct those problems, that's how I ended up in IT.
Very interesting, Ralph. You know, we got to come to you. Were you born for this? Did you start out here, or what was your first kind of career gig?
Oh gosh, no, my first big career, I was at the top of the world, and actually World Trade Center. And I was on the 98th floor of the World Trade Center Tower 2 for many years as a young buck, and scouring the streets of New York City for actually freight. I worked for a big freight carrier, or U.S. Lines, which was an intermodal container ship company, and did that for many years, and then worked my way down to Atlanta in 1996. And
Man,
so,
fantastic. I like asking those questions because I talk to selling partners a lot and they're like, this is what I do. I don't think I could go do something different because I've always done this. And I tell people, if you can see my background, obviously I spent my first career was jumping out of airplanes and blowing up stuff. So I was like, if I can make the pivot into selling new technologies and asking other questions, anyone can. And thank you guys both demonstrated that too. You both started in places so far from where you are now, but you're crushing it where you are. And it's such an important role that you're filling. Pivot into that role you're filling. I teased it in the bios around care and the care report. I think in our business, you think about care, you think about customer service or whatnot. And in a lot of ways, this is customer service. It's just a different take on customer service. So what is the origin of CARE, CARE, and the CARE report?
I'm going to start just for a quick second, and Ralph, I'm going to have you go into it. But when we were meeting up, Ralph and I had many lunches, and we were talking about what was really broken inside the industry. Our focus, really from the IT side, is from the cybersecurity side. And Ralph came up with a quote that it's still profound today. He's like, you can't have security without the liability. You can't have cyber liability without cybersecurity. And we were talking about all of the deficiencies inside of our conversations with CISOs, CFOs, CIOs. So Ralph came up with a brilliant idea of saying, let's combine them. And Ralph, why don't you iterate a little bit further?
my mission and my passion, if you will, Chris, from selling cyber insurance and writing cyber insurance when it first emanated back 15 years ago, the resistance was so great from a lot of CFOs that they didn't want insurance. They didn't think they needed it. And I would always hear, we have security. We really don't need the insurance. And then the security guys would go in, try and sell them more security. And the CFO would say, we have insurance. We really don't need security. So they playing one against the other way back when. And when I finally started to break through and sell insurance to companies, a lot of large companies in Atlanta, I would always hear the same thing when, like you would, Chris, as an advocate, would send me in to help someone with their cyber, and I would go in and they would have a $3 million policy for limits for cyber. And meanwhile, they're doing 700 million for manufacturing. And it just wasn't enough. When I would say, why do you have 3 million? And their answer was always, we're in compliance. We need to be in compliance with a contract, not with the actual risk. And so nothing was ever assessed or quantified. And that's why we came up with this after many years. And when I left the industry a few years ago, we came up with the CARE program, which is an acronym for Cyber Insurance Assessment and Risk Evaluation, because it had to be measured in order to insure it properly, we needed to measure it. And no one has taken the time to do that. There are a few people that do that, but they are also trying to write insurance and get their business. So we're an outsider. And Craig will go into it a little bit about the security measurement also. So we benchmark not only their liability and where they should be insurance-wise, but also the security. So both of those are equal. And like Craig mentioned, you can't have one without the other. You may have great security, but if you have lousy insurance and you're breached, you're out of business. So,
And just to clarify then, so you guys are not in the policy sales business. You're not an insurance broker.
no.
Not at all.
And ideally, you would come in before the client purchases insurance, right? Is that the perfect scenario, or does it matter?
Years ago, yeah, but not now. Most, I would say 99% of the people we're dealing with on a mid-market, they already have insurance. So we're just going in and brushing it up, getting it right for them so that they have the right insurance. And there's so many different facets of saying the right insurance, right? Less exclusions, less gaps, greater limits, broader coverages, et cetera. So there's a lot that goes into that. And when I say 99%, I would say Craig, the smaller market, small businesses now are the ones that are really lagging behind that don't even have policies. So,
Yeah, that's true. They're not aware of such things as the third party incidents, planning, business interruption, and things that they should have to stay in business just for a survival mode. So we help small businesses, and we even have a program specifically focused for small businesses. And we call that the Kia Report SBA. It's the small business assessment. And most people that are really underserved might not have a CISO or someone like that on their team. And this guides them a little bit. And it's very objective. It's straightforward. It's solid for benchmarking. It's a quantitative analysis that they can measure and guide them and even help budget what they might need.
So that's interesting. So small business assessment. If I'm a business owner or a technology advisor listening, at what point should a business need this care report? If you're a stay-home person and you're just have an Amazon business, is there any business too small? Or at what point you're like, hey, if you have this much annual revenue or this many employees, what's a good benchmark to go, you need to pay attention here?
It's, it's not only the size of the company, but the industry, right? Because people ask all the time, how much insurance should I have? It depends on the industry, depends on your risk. So there are so many different factors that go into that. But a lot of times, Chris, what drives a small business finally to buy an insurance policy, a cyber insurance policy, is a contract. And he may be a small business, say less than 50 employees, but he's going to do business with a town or someone that gives him a contract. And in that contract, on page 3 or 4, are the insurance requirements that mandate that he must have general liability, a workers' comp policy, a commercial auto policy. And now the line item is appearing more and more. You must have a cyber insurance policy. And depending on how big that company is, will mandate how much insurance they need. And for a small business, it's usually $1 million policy. And years ago, $1 million policy was a lot of money. Wow. And now it's, God, that won't even pay for your parking down at the state house for when you go to court. But we say that to say that, look, even a little $1 million policy is going to be better than nothing. At least it keeps you in business. So.
Got it. So you mentioned there's many criteria that you factor. That kind of leads me into, okay, great. Then what questions do you ask at that first meeting? How do you check the boxes on the criteria to understand where they are?
So we do things a little differently. Years ago, there were data breach calculators online that you could get online. A lot of insurance carriers would provide that. And basically what that did is it went into how many records do you have, if you're medical records, PHI, health insurance or personal insurance, health information or personal information. And it would calculate how much your insurance you would need for notification cost and damages for third party. So it's all changed now. And why I say that is Craig and I, we started a little differently. We gather information like documentation from a client that we do business with. We gather their insurance policies, and we are looking through those insurance policies for all the mistakes that someone has made. Also, the documents they filled out, all of the application and the forms that they filled out to get the insurance. And now there are many forms. You have the form for cyber insurance. You have a ransom form application you have to fill out, a multi-factor application that you have to fill out. So the standards and the bar has been set a lot higher now by the underwriters before you even get that insurance. They have to quantify what you have and say, okay, Craig, we're going to give you insurance because you have passed the smell test, right? The sniff test. And years ago that was available, but now they are raising the standards for security and compliance, which makes sense. And so we are doing a lot of that front end with documentation, and then we dive in and we do our analytics, and we have our global partners that provide us with algorithms and so forth so that we can benchmark companies properly for we quantify their financial risk. We're not guessing. I always tell CFOs, don't guess. You're not going to gamble with your company. This is serious business.
Yeah, I'd say serious business. So when you had these conversations for that first meeting or even any follow-up meetings, who are you normally talking to? Is there a pretty standard, most of the time it's this person, or again, does it vary by company size and vertical?
The first thing we do is, Ralph, I'll let you get into this, but we want to know who's going to be inside the room, who's going to make that decision. And we're actually a conduit. Many people like our program because it really connects the language barrier. Each C-level, CISO has a different language, CIO has a different language, and the CFO definitely has a different language. We were talking about, are you compliant? I guarantee you get 3 different answers from 3 different people, and they're all correct. So we try to get those members in the room first, and then we work with their teams. We want to make sure, in addition to their policies, we also look at their digital footprint. We want to make sure if they have awareness training, if they have an MSP, or if they've got their tech team and support team, we'll ask them questions as well. How do you protect yourself? We want to get a feeling for that business in that industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important. The collaboration, like you talked about, Craig. Yesterday, we had a meeting with a company out of Dallas, Texas. They're a big franchisor, and they've got 3,000 franchisees that they work with. And luckily on the call, we had both the people on the insurance side and on the security side. The collaboration between the both of them was really nice to see. I have always dealt with the CFO and the CEO, and Craig, on the other hand, has always dealt with the CISO and other people on the other side. But recently, and there's been a lot of articles on the internet that we're reading about, that they say that the 2 of them have to be in the room when writing cyber insurance. No longer is it just the CFO, because he comes from his, like Craig said, his version of compliance is a lot different than the CISO's version of compliance. So those 2 have to meet, and it can't be like a bridge that goes like this, right? They have to meet in the middle so that we can agree on what makes sense financially for the company, and also with the security deficiencies that we measure that have to be met as well.
Gosh. And I'm thinking back to all the education sessions that I've either attended or hosted, and with so many things in advanced technology and emerging technologies, you're no longer dealing with that one person at a company. So many things now. There's technology conversations that the marketing VP needs to be brought in on, because that's something to do with maybe their website or how they're collecting data, even with expense management for mobility. Yeah, I've been on many calls where there's the VP of technology or IT and the CFO, because it impacts them both differently. The IT guy just wants to get off their plate. The CFO wants to get control of the expenses. Yeah, if you're out there listening, man, you definitely need to broaden who you're talking to pretty much for all things, these advanced technology areas, but especially in the area of cybersecurity. Pivoting a little bit to security postures. So when you're doing these meetings, is there any trend you're seeing that's either surprising or maybe not so surprising? What are you seeing when you do these meetings, these initial meetings?
The trend that's surprising, not to me, but to the people in the room, the C-suite, is the business interruption. That's a big one right now. And we find even before, when I was doing insurance and I would get some of the C-suite together in a manufacturing plant, I would get the head of manufacturing would come in and say, look, if we get X happens and all of our machinery does not work anymore, it could take us 6 months to a year to replace that machinery. So not only are we out for 30 days, which is the norm, right? 30 days is the average downtime. But when you get into some different industries, it can be a year to 2 years where they're fully back in operation. And just a simple 30 days being out of business or non-productive. When I ask a CFO, if you're doing X amount in volume, say 500 million a year in production or sales, if you're down for 30 days, how much does that cost? And they said, what does that matter? I'm saying this has to be included in how much you're going to write for insurance. And your security also, it's very surprising to bring that information to the room where there are people that can validate that, right? The CISO can validate that and say, yes, you know what, Chris, we could be down for 30 days or 60 days.
Yeah, that's funny because even your little logo there is a key lock in there. So it made me think about another analogy. Can you have enough padlocks on the door where you just don't need cybersecurity? Do you run into that? Whether you referenced it earlier, they're like, oh, we got the latest and greatest. We got 3 different layers and overlapping security protocol, blah, blah, blah. Do you still need the insurance?
Greg?
I always say this, would you not have a lock in your front door? If you've got 5 locks around your house, do you think you still are going to be broken into? The answer is you could be. So yeah, you're never going to have enough controls being put in place.
And nothing's foolproof. None of these cybersecurity solutions are 100% impenetrable. Is that a fair statement?
I think very fair statement.
Business email compromise.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways that people can come in, getting more creative. Now we've got AI that we're also trying to fight that are mimicking different officers. I know, Ralph, you can give an example where somebody was looking for a check and it impersonated one of their senior officers. Mm-hmm. So, Chris, it's challenging every day and it's changing every day. That's part of the excitement, but also part of the fear of what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that. I saw it was a new one for me. I got a text yesterday and it made me log into my Peach Pass account. So in Georgia, there's a Peach Pass lane with a sticker on your car and you could pay a fee to bypass traffic and whatnot. So I get this text saying, hey, you need to update your credit card on your Peach Pass account. You have insufficient funds and it can result in a ticket if you're driving in the Peach Pass lane. It looked very official. Although I looked up at the 2 and it was like an iCloud account or something. So I knew right away. And secondly, I have a hybrid plugin. So I don't even pay. So thank God. So I'm like, okay. And I replied back. I don't know if I should reply back, but I replied like, good try, not today. Because I knew it was a phishing scam, but I still went logged into the Peach Pass account and checked it out. It was all good. But that's crazy.
Getting back to your question too, on penetration or attacks, right? When people say, what does a cyber attack look like? There are so many facets, right? And what's hot right now? What are we dealing with right now? What do we see? A lot of things are, like Craig mentioned, because of AI, because of things like that you get in the mail, Chris, email or text, it opens the door. It lets you behind the firewalls and all the protection. Because someone clicks on an email. Yep. They are already in the front door. They're in your bedroom, right? And when you click on that, one of the big things we're seeing right now is business email compromise is in invoice manipulation. And that's where the bad guy comes in. He's an imposter. He takes your position, takes your role in all the emails. You might be the controller. And now he starts to manipulate invoices. And what they do is they put different routing instructions on them. And it's the official invoice. It is the invoice. It's not a copy. And when that goes out, clients and customers and consumers start paying money to an invoice and to a routing instruction that's not the right routing instruction. And it happens over and over. And because of that, the insurance levels and the limits on business email compromise maintain a very low limit of 250,000, whereas you can buy millions of insurance in cyber for all different venues. So it's very permanent. It's happening all the time, and people just don't question. And if they do question that with the routing changes in the invoice, they send back an email. Hey, Chris, I noticed you changed your routing instructions. Meanwhile, the bad guy is Chris now. And he said, yes, we did, Craig. We changed the bank, and sorry I didn't notify you about that before, but it's amazing. I had a lady on the phone yesterday, and I thought it was a real person from my doctor's office.
Yeah.
And I swore it was a real person. He
Yeah.
had a great voice, and it was like, whoa.
No, you're right. AI is doing a lot of great things in our industry, and it's advancing technology. But yeah, it also, the bad guys are figuring out how to use it too. So that's where you got to definitely be prepared. A quick note that I wrote down in our pre-show discussion: 80% of companies are not covered. Did I get that right? You do this either not covered or not covered adequately. Is that
Adequately?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. Do you have done an assessment where you're like, "Yep, everything's perfect. No, nothing we can help you with"? Does that ever happen?
Yep, we did that once, and it was a client in Atlanta. Insurance was very good. That was excellent. But the security side, Craig, they had a few, right? They had a few things on security.
Yeah. So, Chris, they did very well. And the CIO was a little hesitant. It's the old term, every rock you turn, you find a snake. And they cleaned up really well previously. They had an incident about 6-7 years ago. So they were very sensitive to all of those security practices. So they passed with flying colors. The one thing we did find, though, and we helped them, the insurance agent was at the table for the readout of the report. They had all the right coverages, which we were really proud of them for doing, but their limits were just a tad low. The one understanding that they had is they planned on increasing their limits, but on the renewal of the policy, Ralph was great advising the company and their insurance agent that they could easily increase the policies today, and which they did.
Yeah, I think I also remember we were talking. So that client, even though there wasn't a whole lot, you said they passed with flying colors. I imagine that C-level and then their board of directors are probably, that's a good, you want that third party check, right? There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, can someone come in, unbiased person, take the emotion out and give us a grade, how we're doing? Is that
So, Chris, it's great on the application. We being agnostic, a third party lens, this lends credence then for their application for renewal as well.
Yeah.
That they are practicing security. They're continuing practicing security, and they've got that layer that they do every day, that future considerations for their policy might be taken into effect to lower some of the premiums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent. Pivoting just a little bit more, digging into this, you were sharing with me these different components or tiles, I think you called them, that you analyze to determine a client's risk. Talk to me a little bit about that. What else are we looking at here to determine what their grade would be with the care report?
We've got 22 threat tiles that we take in consideration. It's fairly deep. Ralph, you can go into a few of those, but that is actually pulling in both the security side and the liability side.
Also look at enterprise data. What does that look like? What does a digital supply chain look like? External network data, historical data. On our database, we have over 200 million company-specific details and technologies, and we'll look at industry, number of employees, company URLs, subdomains. We do a deep dive. People have never seen a report like this before. And even with our small business assessment, it's a 40 to 50 page report. And on this, the liability is one side of it, but the security posture is grading them on and grading them on as far as benchmarking. No one's seen that before either. We do an outside in look, and maybe Craig can talk a little bit about that. We do. We're not inside their computers. Most people do for, pen testing and things like that. Maybe you can explain a little bit of that, Craig.
So it's more of an agnostic approach, Chris. It's outside in. We're looking as though we're a third party looking at all the vulnerabilities inside of a company, and we do an attack surface from that side. Some of those are measured using some NIST components, CIS components, but that also benchmarks and compares against the industry standards that a company might be in. And it also looks at if the company is meeting the quantification and validation of those requirements for that industry. We also look at the risk mitigation. What are they doing to prevent that? And it identifies the vulnerabilities. And we also then provide recommendations upon those vulnerabilities. But the report itself, once that's all built in that construct, it really aligns the IT investment against their insurance needs. And it's pulling from both sides of that circle.
Not only do we look at what they outside in looking, excuse me, we also have there's a 50,000 cyber simulations that we throw at a company. And that I think we showed you one of the cyber maps, cyber attack maps.
Yeah.
And so right now, every single day, there's anywhere between 12 and 18 million cyber attacks daily. So when we say we're going to do a simulation that has 50,000, that's nothing compared to 18 million. There's just so many ways that your company can be penetrated. But like Craig said, we're looking outside in, and it's a different eyes and a different viewpoint than their internal security, right? Internal security is always trying to fix things and patch things and the shield, but they can't see what we can see. And
the analytics provide a viewpoint of those 50,000, and it's for that independent company, that individual company. So we apply all 50 against that and see where they are against that map.
Interesting. Is there any trend on verticals that you see are most at risk? Or it obviously could be anybody, but if you think about if you had to put your clients in three buckets of vertical types, what are the top three or one or two verticals you see that are most at risk?
I think everybody's really at risk. I don't think it's just one.
Okay, so don't worry about your vertical. You just need to to have it done.
well,
I think
healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, IT,
it's growing.
finance.
Some of the usual suspects.
Yeah. Go where the money is, right? Where you can make the most damages, get an immediate return.
Because sometimes you got to wonder, why are these bad actors doing what they're doing? Is their end game is always to get money from the organization, right? Is that the general, or it could be corporate espionage. Maybe are there cyber attacks? You're just trying to maybe someone's trying to take their competition out or something. I don't know. It's like, why are these attacks happening? What's their end game?
So we work with independent companies as well. We're working right now with the independent community, bank systems, credit unions, people that have legacy systems that might not be up to snuff. These are easy targets for people. So that's one trend. You mentioned fintech, and that's also part of my love. So we look at those type of industries. Healthcare, again, they might be on older systems. They're trying to get updated. And you see a lot of progress over the last 24 months of that. But those are easy to target. And still, once they're in a system, you got to remember, they can be hibernating in the system and waiting for the right moment as well. So it's not that you have to worry about today. You've got to worry about what happened yesterday.
God, that does make it complex. Ralph, you mentioned you have all this data, which is great, right? So you've met with all these companies, you've seen it done good, bad, and ugly. Tell me a little bit more about when you compare a client security posture, what kind of information do you compare them to?
Like I said before, we benchmark them with other companies, their peers, right? It's always about their peers. And there's 22 different tiles. We don't have time to go into them right now, but it's info that we have that takes a lot of time for us to gather that. And like I said before, it's enterprise data. It's a whole list that we have here. I could read through them: digital supply chain, external network data, but it has to be benchmarked against companies like theirs. And we go into the history, like Craig said. If this happened before, did you fix it? That's very important for underwriters and for the insurance industry. If this happened, how did you remediation? What did you do to fix that? Or are you still floating the same? That's why it's important that a lot of the underwriters now have stepped up to security. And a lot of these underwriters will do deep dives as well. They want to know where your website is, who you have, what your clients are, what your third-party risks are, not only who you are, but who do you do business with? And are they protected? It's a whole web. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I got to believe these underwriters or these cyber insurance companies, they're probably grateful for you guys because you're making their job a little bit easier. Is that true? You're doing all the due diligence because they're in the business of selling insurance, so they're not willing to do any of this work, are they? Or I guess if they are, there might be a conflict. I'm trying to tell you all the areas you need to buy insurance from it, but having you tell the client and show the client, that just seems to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, there's two different layers. You have the broker and you have the insurance carriers. The insurance carrier is never going to say, hey, Chris, do you think you have enough insurance? That's the broker's job. He's in between.
Got it. Now, it's been interesting. Like I said, I've been the wireless guy for years, but the longer I'm doing it, the more I'm realizing just how important this conversation is to really all technology. But when you look at how many threats originate on a mobile device, and so many companies, been in my experience, I've talked to several Fortune 500 and 1,000 kind of companies that don't even have a MDM or any kind of security software or strategy when it comes to mobile devices. It's fascinating. I'm really glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, we always make sure that they do have the MDM and things like that. Bring your own device are becoming more common for some of the small businesses, just from an economic standpoint. But you want to make sure you have policies in place and that they're practiced. MFA is another big one. We see people being casual, but now that there's certain requirements and compliances that require MFA, especially on the HIPAA side, and we want to make sure that they're following all the compliances in a true sense, whether it be a HIPAA, you've got the California acts and things like that.
Yeah. Craig and we had that conversation earlier today about QR codes, how I see people with their phones snapping on QR codes, and there's so much malware, right? The QR code.
Absolutely.
People don't realize that. Yeah.
And two, we're living in this world where everything's in the cloud. And even in my role, there's multiple portals I have to log into. And I try to practice good password strategy of different passwords and all, but try to keep up with them. So you have LastPass and then you have the third-party verification, like I guess Duo or Enable. There's all these other tools. It's getting to the point, man, it's tough just trying to get into your tools sometimes, especially I just recently changed roles and jobs. So I'm trying to get all that organized. It's a lot of work, but it's important. You got to do it. So as we wrap up here, is there anything we haven't covered or any last words you guys want to share with us?
So part of it is anytime's a good time to bring us in for a care report. Again, we're agnostic. We're not favoring any insurance carrier or program. We're a third lens, if you will, and to help you. And it's better to have somebody look over your shoulder and recheck, but it's measure twice, cut once. The other thing is we want to make sure people are practicing what they have, whether they've got the right training in place, if they've got incident planning put in place. It's a reinsurance of having us in there.
Yeah.
Ralph, what are your thoughts?
I always I keep this sign around for a reason. I don't know if you can read it.
Oh yeah. What if you're wrong? What if you're wrong?
I've done many presentations on that. And when I say to CFOs, please don't gamble. You can't gamble with your company. And the number of attacks per day, 15 million. If your odds of winning the lottery are like a 1 in 15 million, right? Reverse those. And now you've got 15 million coming at you and everyone else. These guys only have to be right once. And if any of your defenses fall down, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. I said that to one of my kids the other day. He said, what does that mean? I said, it means they have nowhere to go. Your odds of hitting a fish are pretty good. So
that's right.
It's not really going to happen. It's really when it's going to happen.
I've heard that a million times, Craig.
Yeah. Got to have a plan, and you better make sure you're covered.
Absolutely.
Excellent. This has been a great conversation. Definitely, if you're listening and you want more information, Craig, what's the best way to get more information?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us. It's easy. We've got our website. It's care-report.com. We have a lot of information that's on the website. We even have some tools information you can take a look at, and easy to contact us with any questions.
Fantastic. I'll have check the show notes. If you're one of those listeners like the show notes, I'll have some links there of how to get a hold of them. And of course, their website and a summary of this conversation. And as always, if any of this hit home for you, you're thinking of a client or a colleague or someone who could benefit from this conversation, please share it with them. I appreciate it. And gosh, yeah, let's wrap it up, guys. Thanks so much. I appreciate you guys making time today. Yeah.
Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. No problem. So there you go, folks. Another episode of The Wireless Way. I appreciate you dropping in, and we'll catch you next time. Hey, just a quick note before we go to the next portion of the show. I'm excited to introduce you to a brand new partner. This isn't a company calling us saying, hey, we want to advertise on your show. This is me calling them saying, I believe in what you stand for. I believe in your product. I want you to advertise on my show. I'm talking about Pure Talk, America's wireless company, whose CEO is a veteran. Like me, I can appreciate that. And he actually served several tours in theater and combat. It's a wireless company who believes in creating American jobs, which is why their customer service teams are so good. And they're actually located in Covington, Georgia, just south of where I'm at in North Georgia. And here's the deal. Pure Talk is on America's most dependable 5G network. All the same towers, same network as the big guys, but half the cost. You can get unlimited talk, unlimited text, and 5 gigs of data for just $25. Not too shabby, as I like to say. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year on their cell phones. So this is for consumers in the U.S. Definitely want to check this out. You can keep your phone number or choose from the latest iPhones and Androids if you need a new phone. So just go to puretalk.com to save on your wireless bill. Make the switch today at puretalk.com and enjoy America's wireless company, Pure Talk. So I hope that last episode on cybersecurity and insurance really made you think of how you can leverage this conversation with your customers and really truly add some value there. I had an idea. I wanted to bring on my colleague, my teammate, if you will, James Morrison. James, thanks for checking out this episode. I really want to get your thoughts because you are our cybersecurity guy, right? You're our expert in this area. Thanks for making the time here. And I'd like to get your thoughts on how it all connects, the cybersecurity insurance and the cybersecurity posture and all the different solutions out there. So what say you?
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on. I'm always fascinated to hear other people's thoughts around that intersection between cybersecurity and the other technologies. And part of my messaging for years has been, when you're deploying a new technology, where is security in there? And prior to probably the last 4 or 5 years, it was always a bolt-on. We would add security over the top of a technology, and it often didn't have resonance, or it often didn't have that resilience. So an attack could peel the security off and then get to that underlying technology. And so in this conversation, I thought was fascinating because insurance is a change point for cybersecurity. I often have partners start the conversation with a customer of, where are you with compliance? Do you have any compliances that are bugging you? But the second sort of conversation is, where is your cybersecurity insurance policy? And have you seen changes in the requirements for cybersecurity insurance? Because insurance companies, cybersecurity insurance is relatively new in the insurance industry, but they're learning. And the way they learn is through data that they collect. And it's the data that they collect, not from the companies that have been victimized, that's part of it, but the companies that have avoided victimization, or the companies that have been able to deploy technologies. And so now when companies are going back and having cybersecurity insurance conversations, they're being told, today, you have to do so much more than you did to begin with. And I think in the world that you and I talk in and talk about wireless and MDM solutions, that's the edge of your network, right? So now we're in a world where 51% of the internet traffic is mobility. It's phones, it's tablets, and IoT coming up in that. And so as companies deploy these mobility products, that conversation is becoming increasingly the touch point. How do I secure my phones? How do I secure my tablets? How do I secure my IoT? And so insurance is starting to dabble that way as well. Insurance is starting to say, wait a second, what kind of risk do we have here? It's all about risk. And it's that, how do I identify the risk? And then what actions do I take to either mitigate the risk, to accept the risk? And so I think that's that next horizon is mobility, and how can insurance sort of force companies to deploy technologies to secure that.
Fantastic. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, MDM is a big part of my talk track. Securing the devices, not only the devices, but the data on the devices. And that even goes into BYOD, bringing your own device. There's a lot of concerns there, because how, as a company, can you take positive control of a device and the data if you don't even own the device? So I'm definitely seeing a trend of people going back to corporate owned devices.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's funny you mentioned that, because when I was in the bureau, we had bureau owned devices. And that was the reason. Initially it was BlackBerries, then we moved, of course, into Android phone systems. But that conversation happened very early and said, wait a second, I don't want BYOD. I don't know. How do I control that device and absolutely the data on the device if you leave, right? You're no longer at work. And so I think you're right. I've seen an increasing conversation of, especially for executives and people in key marketplace or key places of job positions, they're saying, no, we want to own this device so that we can control it, we can kill it. So if that device gets stolen, right? So if that happens, gets left somewhere, we can send a kill order to make sure that data isn't exposed. And I think that's why MDM solutions are also, I think you're seeing that rise, is how do I actually deploy some sort of technology that can do that, can manage all of those endpoints, secure them, and make sure that the data, at the end of the day, it's about the data that resides there, is secure, no matter whether it's an insider threat or something inadvertent exposure.
Share with us just a little bit, what's your overarching philosophy about managing the program here at Intel? What are you doing to help partners in this area?
Increasingly, what we're trying to do is get closer to the customer. We've always been this technology broker, distributor, and making those recommendations through the partner to the customer. What we want to do is we want to get closer. And I think in cybersecurity in particular, it's much more about trust than even deploying a circuit or deploying a voice or deploying a contact center. So as we do more of these customer-facing events, we're also training these partners on how to have the cybersecurity conversation that they need to have. And that's hard because cybersecurity is somewhere between 40 and 60 different technologies all wrapped up in this wrapper that we call cybersecurity. And so we want to help them focus on really key things like compliance, have that conversation. We want to focus on endpoint and MDR, right? So managed detection and response. Who watches your house when nobody's home? So rather than trying to be this generalist in cybersecurity, we want to make the partners really focus on 3 or 4 conversations. And then also, and this is where you and I will always, is that intersection, the upsell, cross-sell. So if a customer comes to you and says, hey, I want to do an MDM solution. I want to get rid of my BYOD policy, and I want to start actually deploying corporate-owned machines. How are you going to secure that? And so often you and I will be tag teaming a little bit and do a little wrestling move where we come in and say, security and wireless, security, wireless, because a device is much more secure if security lies under it. So it's like painting a wall. If I put primer down, then that paint's going to stick better. And so what we want to do is make sure we have a security underneath an MDM solution so that if something happens and that MDM solution is compromised, a vulnerability, it doesn't expand. The bad guy can't expand their foothold beyond wireless. We want to definitely make sure that technology is protected, but also it doesn't add an extraordinary amount of risk.
I forgot the stat because I'm not good with stats, but I recall it was like over half of cyber threats often originate on a mobile device. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah,
and
it's funny because we don't always have root cause analysis is hard because so after an event occurs and we bring in an incident response company, there isn't a lot of technology deployed on the endpoints. And this is why BYOD, I think, is starting to lose some of its luster, is we can show that it came in through something from that BYOD marketplace, but we can't really show what happened. And so now with companies backing off of BYOD and deploying corporate machines, we are going to have a better forensic visibility into what's happening on those endpoints. And I think it's a good sign. It does add a little bit of cost because now we're going to have to deploy an additional technology, but companies are willing to do that if they can make sure that they're not losing that data. And one of the things in compliance I always talk about is state data privacy laws. Data privacy laws are going to require you to manage the data no matter where it exists. And that includes on those mobile endpoints.
Oh man, that's great. Anything else you want to leave us with? Any last words on this topic, or I don't know, anything else, any other topic? Leave us some wisdom, James.
Yeah, I know about wisdom. It's a kind of canoodling or some sort of navel gazing. But I think I'd like to leave you where we started. Every time you're having a technology conversation, there should be a security conversation adjacent to it. We have every opportunity to talk to our customers about cybersecurity. And I say, this is a 100%. You don't get a lot of 100%, but 100% of your customers are buying cybersecurity. And if they're not buying it from you, they're probably buying it directly from the vendor. We can help you with almost every technology need. So whether it's wireless and through Chris Whitaker and his new group, or cybersecurity through my group, we can help you. So why not just have the free conversation? We offer a free 30-minute consultation to any customer. So take us up on it. Don't worry about me being too busy. Don't worry about Chris being too busy. Use us.
That's right.
Make sure you're giving us those opportunities, because in the end, we're going to do better to secure your customer. They're going to probably get it cheaper than if they buy it themselves. And we have an opportunity here to expand into more technologies and more revenue in time.
Yep, I agree 100%. There's so much more than just connectivity. Of course, wireless is another connectivity, and all connectivity needs to be secured. So there's always a way we can add more value and go deeper into the tech stack with you and your clients. So James, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you making time and look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for, man. Let's just keep it rolling.
Fantastic. And if you're a listener and you follow me on LinkedIn, be sure to check out a new video series called The Wireless Edge, where me and Jamal Purvis are breaking down all kind of nuggets, different types of the tech stack when it comes to wireless. And I'm sure there'll be conversations around cybersecurity too. So thanks again for checking out this episode. We'll see you next time on The Wireless Way.